All right, let's dive into the world of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, with this book, The Structure of Magic Vault 2.
That Grinder and Bandler.
Yeah, published back in '76. It's all about how we experience the world through our senses and how that shapes the way we communicate.
You know, it's really fascinating when you think about it. We don't just absorb information.
Right.
Grinder and Bandler argue that we filter it,
Yeah.
organize it, through these things they call representational systems.
Okay, representational systems, got it.
Yeah.
So specific ways that we're representing the world internally.
Exactly. And they break it down into 5 primary ones: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory.
So we're talking like taste, smell,
All of them.
sight, sound.
Yeah.
Okay.
We use all of them naturally, but
Right.
we tend to favor 1 or 2.
So I'm like a very visual person. I'm always picturing things. Somebody else might be much more auditory, really tuned into sounds and language.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And you know what I think is so interesting that Grinder and Bandler point out?
What's that?
Even something like wetness, which we think of as a very simple, straightforward sensory experience,
Oh, it's wet. Right.
actually involves a combination of these systems working together.
Give me an example.
Think about it.
Okay.
You feel the coolness of the water.
Okay, that's kinesthetic.
That's kinesthetic. Or
Ah,
you see the glistening surface of the water.
visual.
Visual. And you might even hear the splashing sound.
Right. Auditory.
So it's not just one sense, it's this.
It's the combination.
It's the whole combination that creates that full experience of wetness.
That's interesting because I never really thought about it that way. I just figured, like, wetness, there's probably a wet receptor,
Right, exactly.
but we're getting information from all these different places.
And we're not even conscious of it most of the time.
Interesting.
And that's a key insight of NLP.
Mm.
It's like understanding these unconscious processes and how they influence our behavior. And, you know, for our deep dive today, how they influence the way we communicate.
So how do these representational systems actually show up in the way we use language?
Well, that's one of the most fascinating aspects of this whole thing.
Okay.
Grinder and Bandler found that our language often reflects our dominant representational system.
Okay.
For example, a visual person might say, "I see what you mean,"
Hmm.
or "That looks good to me."
Yeah.
While someone who's more auditory might say, "That sounds right," or "I hear what you're saying."
So if somebody's always saying, oh, I feel like this, they're probably kinesthetic.
You got it.
Okay.
And they give such great examples in the book. They really break it down, how these very specific words, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, what they call predicates,
Yeah.
can reveal a person's preferred system. They contrast words like black, clear, spiral, image, all very visual, with tinkling, silent, squeal, blast. Those evoke more of an auditory experience.
So just by paying attention to the kinds of language that somebody's using,
You got it.
you can kind of get a sense of like, okay, this is their dominant representational system.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And once you know that, you can tailor your communication to better connect with them.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So for our listeners, how do we take this knowledge and actually use it? Grinder and Bandler must give some practical advice in this book. So if I'm understanding this right, understanding someone's representational system is like, I don't know, it's like a cheat sheet
Yeah.
for better communication.
It is. It is.
But, you know, Grinder and Bandler don't just stop at identifying the system, right?
Right.
What do they say about actually using this knowledge?
Well, they offer a whole range of techniques, and it's really fascinating stuff.
Okay.
One of the most practical is what they call matching or pacing someone's representational system.
Okay. Break that down. What does that mean?
It's actually pretty intuitive. If you're talking to someone who's highly visual, you want to use vivid imagery in your language.
Okay.
Paint a picture with your words.
Gotcha.
Right. Imagine this.
Right.
It's as clear as,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing.
So then if they're more kinesthetic, what would you do?
Then you would tap into feelings and sensations.
How does that feel?
Yeah. How does this sit with you? Let's get a handle on this problem. You're speaking their language, you see. Literally and figuratively.
Oh, that's really cool. I like that. But then what about those times when communication just feels really off?
Yeah.
Like you're saying what you think are the right things,
Yeah.
but it's just not landing. Do Grinder and Bandler talk about that at all?
They do, and it's a really crucial aspect of their work.
Yeah.
Remember we were talking about incongruity before?
Yes.
Where someone's words don't match their nonverbal cues.
Right. Like when you say I'm fine, but you're like, frowning.
Exactly. With
Exactly.
your fists clenched.
Uh.
Grinder and Bandler say that incongruity is often a sign of internal conflict.
Oh, interesting.
Part of the person wants to communicate one thing,
Right.
But another part is holding back,
Yeah.
maybe even sending a contradictory message.
So how do you deal with that? That just seems like a recipe for disaster.
Well, it can be,
Mm-hmm.
but, awareness is the first step.
Okay.
When you spot that incongruity, whether in yourself or in someone else,
Right.
don't just brush it off. It's like a little signal
Yeah.
to slow down, to listen more deeply,
Okay.
and maybe even just gently inquire about what's going on beneath the surface.
So it's almost like you're not even paying attention to the words so much as like
It's the whole picture.
the body language, the tone,
Exactly.
everything.
The energy behind the words.
Yeah.
And that's where things get really interesting. Because by paying attention to all those subtle cues,
Yeah.
you can start to kind of unravel those deeper layers of communication
Yeah.
and get a much richer understanding of what's really being said
It makes you realize how often I think we misinterpret each other,
all the time.
even when we're trying to be like as upfront and honest as possible.
All the time.
Hey,
And that's why this work is so valuable,
yeah.
because it gives us the tools to move beyond just those surface level interpretations, to really connect on a deeper, more authentic level.
I love that. This is like learning a secret language.
That's a great way to put it. It's like this whole secret language of human behavior.
Yes.
And the more fluent you become in that language, the more skillful you'll be at navigating, all the complexities of human interaction.
Right.
It's about building stronger relationships, resolving conflicts more effectively,
Wow.
ultimately creating much more fulfilling experiences for yourself and for the people around you.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to go back because you mentioned this earlier, this idea of the map is not the territory. Can you unpack that for me a bit? Because it sounds really interesting, but
Yes.
okay, the map is not the territory. Sounds deep. What's that all about?
It's a core principle of NLP,
Okay.
borrowed from the work of Alfred Korzybski,
Okay.
and it's incredibly powerful.
Okay.
Once you really kind of grasp it,
Okay.
essentially what it means is that our perceptions of reality
Okay.
are not reality itself,
Right.
but they're these subjective maps
Okay.
that we create based on our own unique experiences,
Uh-huh.
our beliefs, our values,
Right.
and even, yes, our preferred representational systems.
So my map of the world might be totally different from your map of the world,
Exactly.
even if we're standing in the same place.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to be aware
Yeah.
of our own filters,
Yeah.
our own biases,
Yeah.
and be open to the fact that other people have their own equally valid maps,
Right.
even if those maps seem totally foreign to us.
So then how do you bridge that gap? Because, I mean, so often it's those differences in perception
Right.
that cause misunderstanding,
Absolutely.
arguments, all that stuff.
Well, and that's where the magic of NLP really comes into play.
Okay.
Remember these representational systems we've been talking about?
Yes.
They're not just about understanding how we perceive the world,
Right.
but they're also about learning to see the world
Yeah.
through the eyes of other people.
So by understanding somebody's representational system, you can start to at least appreciate their map,
Exactly.
even if it's different from yours.
It's about cultivating empathy, really.
Wow.
Stepping into someone else's shoes
Yeah.
and seeing the world from their perspective.
Yeah.
And the more we can do that, the more likely we are to find common ground,
Right.
even when our initial perceptions might clash.
It's making me think about all the times, you get in an argument with somebody and you're like, no, but this is how it is.
Right.
But what I'm hearing you say is there's really no how it is.
Exactly.
Everyone's got their own experience.
Just different ways of experiencing the same reality.
Yeah, that's really cool. This has been a really interesting deep dive. We covered a lot of ground here. Representational systems.
Yeah.
Incongruity. The map is not the territory. It's a really fascinating framework for understanding how we communicate.
It really is. It's amazing. And,
Right.
we've only just scratched the surface.
Right.
Grinder and Bandler's work, it's full of practical tools
Mm.
and techniques that can help you put these concepts into practice in your own life.
So for our listeners, if they want to learn more, where should they go? What's the next step on this NLP journey?
Well, of course, I highly recommend checking out The Structure of Magic.
Yeah,
It's a classic for a reason.
it's a good book.
It really is. But even beyond that, the most important thing is to bring this awareness
Right.
of representational systems,
Yeah.
of incongruity into your daily interactions.
Yeah, just be more aware.
Be aware,
Right.
pay attention to the language people are using,
Right?
pay attention to their nonverbal cues,
Yes.
to all the subtle ways
Right.
that they reveal their own unique maps of the world.
It's about becoming a more conscious communicator. both in the way that you're expressing yourself
Absolutely.
and also in how you're interpreting what other people are saying.
Yes, exactly. And remember,
Yes.
the map is not the territory.
Love it.
Embrace the diversity of human experience
Yes.
and watch the magic unfold.
This has been great. Thanks so much for walking us through all this.
It's my pleasure. Always happy to talk about this stuff.
And until next time, keep exploring.
Absolutely. Explore away.